plantation. And he did say, he got along with
I don't
a
care.
lot of
No,
white
I was
neighbors and stuff.
there.
He was there before
And
you.
black
He's
people
older than
and
you.
white people got along
He's older than
way
you.
better than they do today. Because
What?
the white people are sick of the black people. Everybody's
You said
sick of
sick
the
and
black.
dogs on him? What'd you say?
I said that white people and black
The
people
water
got along
hoses?
way better than they are
You
today.
said the water hoses?
I said that white people are sick of the blacks
You
complaining.
said the lynchings?
So what though?
The lynchings?
Did you know that there were, I think, something like 4,000 blacks who owned slaves
4,000 blacks who own slaves?
in Kentucky or one of those
No.
areas?
What
You didn't
source
know
is
that?
that? No, what's your source?
One of my hosts talked about it the other day on
Who?
the show. But you didn't know that,
No,
huh?
what's the
All
source?
your little black supremacy book, you didn't look that up.
No. What source is that?
Let's do this. We'll get
That's
it
a
for you and
lie.
put it up there.
You ever heard of the book by James Lowe, The Lies My History Teacher Told Me? That would be in it. That's a lie.
What?
Okay, so that's a brief clip from my interview with Jesse Lee Peterson. Good interview, good discussion with Jesse Lee Peterson out there in Los Angeles. If you haven't, please go to Amazon.com, purchase my book, Black Supremacy, available on Amazon.com. Go get that. By yours truly, Dr. William Dion James. So today I want to discuss what we saw in that clip. Jesse Lee Peterson, he was saying, talking about black slave owners. And he said, in Kentucky during the time period, there's around 4,000 blacks who owned slaves. So I just want to address this. I'm an objective person. Here at Dr. William James Reports, we address the truth. This is the home of objective truth. I want to change, the world. And the only way to do that is to deal with the facts, historical facts, and not play games. So he made a claim. You see me ask him about his source. He didn't have a source. And I wanted to know the source so that I can research this. I'm a researcher. I'm a historian. I have a master's degree in history. I'm obviously a researcher. I have a doctorate. I did my own dissertation. And this is what I do. I do research. I try to find the truth. I'm not into playing games. All right. I don't need to manipulate research to fit my narrative. Whatever the research says, whatever the objective truth is what I'm going to go with. So if he had a source that we could review together and it just turns out he's telling the truth, it's a credible source, it's a tier 1 source, I wanted to look at the source, evaluate it, but he didn't have one. That way we could come to an understanding. We could find the truth, but he didn't have the truth. Okay, so here we're going to look at some sources. I have the truth. Here's one source. Go get this book, Black Masters, right? By Michael P. Johnson, right? You can order this on Amazon. It discusses what I'm going to discuss here, all right, along with another source, all right? Michael P. Johnson and James L. Rourke. They did a lot of research. 2 historians. This is a bestseller, peer-reviewed book. And I'm going to discuss the information that's in it along with another source. Okay. So let's look at this source here. He made a claim and he was talking about black slave owners. What he didn't do was add in the context behind that, because there were blacks who owned slaves. But let's look at the context. Okay. So let's start here. Okay. This source, the Black Slave Owners, you can look this up, by Joseph E. Holloway, says the first line here: the majority of black slave owners were members of the mulatto class, and in some cases were the sons and daughters of white slave masters. Now, let me read that again. The majority of black slave owners were members of the mulatto class. In some cases, they were the sons and daughters of white slave masters. So the people that Jesse Lee Peterson was calling black, these are people who had white mothers or white fathers, and they called them black. Right? Now, Jesse Lee Peterson doesn't believe in Mendel's law. He doesn't believe in the one drop rule, where if you have one drop of, like, African blood, if your mother's black, you're black. If your father's black, you're black. He believes in, the mulatto class, and him and other people, they was just say, oh, you're mixed. Like, I've heard Candace Owens say this before. Oh, my children aren't black, they're mixed. So you can't now just say, oh, these people were black, when you want to push an agenda, when you want to push a narrative about black people owning slaves. Now, were there people who were 100% black who owned slaves? What, they had a black mother and black father and they owned slaves? Yes. That is discussed in the book by Michael B. Johnson. But that is the minority. That is an anomaly. There were some black slave owners who were cruel, but again, that's an anomaly. That is in the minority. In most cases, it is the people we see here who were mulattoes, they had a white mother or a white father, and they were white passing, what they called fair skin, because they knew this was a part of the divide and conquer. They used to try to figure out any way to separate black people, if they could separate us based on sexism, classism, skin tone. This is why I don't believe any of that today. And I want to get into that more. This is why you can't be, a modern feminist and say, like, you're for black people. You can't be in support of these different agendas that are used to divide us and manipulate us. And these things are to our detriment. And then say that you're pro-black. But the majority of black slave owners were members of the mulatto class. These were white people. Okay. Or what we would say mixed. He doesn't want to throw in this context. Many of the mulatto slave owners separated themselves from the masses of black people and attempted to establish a caste system based on color, wealth, and free status. These were people who tried to separate themselves from black people, these black slave owners that he's talking about. Let's look at the second paragraph. These mulattoes of the old free blacks elite did not attend church with the dark-skinned blacks of Charleston City. Okay, so they didn't even like the darker skinned black people, because again, these were the white passing black people here who had a white father or a white mother, usually a white father who passed away and left land or property, and the slaves were considered property. So then you would have black slave owners. A lot of the times you had free blacks who were buying the freedom of their siblings, their mother, their father, their cousins, their relatives, and then they would be labeled as a slave owner, but all they did was buy the freedom of their relatives. They weren't treating them poorly. That was just to make sure that they weren't under someone else's property, uh, being a slave and treated poorly. Okay, so when you do, like a bill of sale, a black person making a purchase of a slave and taking over ownership, but they were just doing it because it was their relative. Okay, so the third paragraph: large numbers of free blacks owned black slaves in numbers disproportionate to their representation in society. According to the federal census of 1830, free blacks owned more than 10,000 slaves in Louisiana, Maryland, South Carolina, and Virginia. The majority of black slave owners lived in Louisiana and planted sugarcane. Okay. Here's another key thing, though, that I want to look at. Probably the most important. Here. So here we have a chart, but I'm going to read below the chart though. But here we have a chart breaking it down by year. Each year from 1790 to 1860, you know, the number of black slave owners and the number of slaves. All right, this chart shows the free black slave owners and their slaves in Charleston from 1790 through 1860. So this is just Charleston. This is not the entire United States of America. But let's look below that, to the paragraph below that. It says the majority of urban black slave owners were women. I'll say that again. The majority of urban black slave owners were women. Urban means black. That's all that means to this day. When they say urban community, they're talking about black. So it's like black, black. Urban black slave owners were women. In 1820, free black women represented 68% of heads of households in the North and 70% of slave owning heads of colored households in the South. So basically 70% in the United States of America in totality. The total number of black slave owners, right? 70% were black women. Black women were the majority of slaves emancipated by white slave owning men with whom they had sexual relations. I'm sorry. So these are black women that they let go, and then they allowed them to rule over black men and rule over the black household. All right. The majority of the ones that they let free were women for obvious reasons. And this is so deep. This is so important to understand because this is what we see today. They uplift black women today in society. They have them graduating college or enrolling in college at certain rates, providing a false narrative. They're making a certain amount of money, but they still don't make more than black men overall. But it's to push an agenda so that black women feel like they don't need black men. And then you got, black women leading households, single parent households in the United States of America, and we're in shambles. They knew if they let black men free at the same rates that they let black women free, there would be more of a chance at an uprising, at a rebellion. We see this with people like Denmark Vesey, John Horse, Nat Turner, all right, Gabriel Prosser. All of these men leading rebellions, okay? It was much more likely to happen if you let black men go free. Denmark Vesey was free for like 2 decades. He was like 50 years old, 55 when he led his rebellion. He had bought his freedom, but he was just upset and tired of seeing what he saw. So this is showing you something. These black women had husbands or fathers who were white, and then the property, the human property, was passed down to them. They don't tell you this. People like Jesse Lee Peterson. This is the point. This is the problem. White supremacists and people who push white supremacist narratives depend on your ignorance. And I don't like that because that's intellectually dishonest. Rather than dealing with the facts and putting everything into context to understand history and understand the current state of America, they try to play games. So here we have it. These were not just strictly black people. They were mulattoes. They were mixed. They had white fathers and or white husbands. So when someone says to you, black slave owners, what do they mean by that? This is what history really shows us. This is what the sources show us. Do not be fooled and do not fall for the same tricks. This is the information that I discuss in my book. This is why this is important to know, and this is what I said to Jesse Lee Peterson in the interview. If you don't know your history, it will repeat itself. You have to know your history to prevent what happened in the past from happening in the present. And currently it's happening. The divide and conquer trick between men and women. If we don't learn history, you don't know how to carry yourself and do what is best for the black community. Please like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Let me know if you want me to touch on another topic. I will be going more in depth about this. Please like, comment, share the video. Go get the book, Black Supremacy on Amazon.com. Peace.